Okay, welcome to a Sunday morning edition of The Sweat. Jessie, Coffield, I'm Emerson, Lotzia. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet all of you at home. We're going to go game by game through today's main slate, delivering the answers to all of your fantasy football and sports betting questions.
It's very exciting. Just comment your questions on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're going to get our experts to answer as many of them as we can. And for those of you who are watching us on Facebook, we'll be asking you guys questions that'll pop up on the screen. So let's interact with each other. You answer our questions and we'll answer yours.
Sounds like a plan, but let's also put our panel to work. How about that? DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Gary and Thorne, and the fantasy girl Rosalie Michaels. We're going to start by ripping through some of the games in the 1 o'clock slate.
Let's start with the Seahawks and Eagles. DK Sportsbook has the Eagles at -1. Basically a pick 'em. Who do you think wins, Jeff?
I mean, it's basically the same situation as last week for me with the Eagles. They have maybe Alshon Jeffrey, maybe a really banged up Alshon Jeffrey. Nelson Aguilar now. They're down Jordan Howard. How is this team going to score enough points to win this game? I think this is going to be a slow-paced game. I'll just take the points here with the Seahawks, who again have Russell Wilson. I actually really like the Seahawks in this spot.
Gary, and where are you going? Nope, we can't hear you. Nope. And out.
And,
back?
Yeah,
Yes? No?
there
Hey!
it is.
Look, I'm not saying put the farm on the Eagles or anything, but I like them in this spot. Obviously there are concerns about their offensive weapons, but at the same time, this is a team that consistently covers when at home against good teams. They've covered 6 of the last 8 home games they've played against teams with a 500 record or better, and the Seahawks are stubborn enough to try and run the football directly at Philadelphia's greatest strength, their defensive line. Giving up the 3rd fewest adjusted yards per opponent carry. Unless Schottenheimer decides he wants to revitalize his offense this week, I just think the Eagles defense sets up pretty well against the Seahawks.
Rosalie, who do you think wins?
Yeah, my gut says Seahawks here, so I have to go with them. But it's really close, as the spread indicates. You know, you look at the Eagles and all of the things that the guys have already said, right? And then when you look at the fact that their win percentage when they're home, when they're the favorite, and after a loss is in the 70% historically. So you're thinking that the Eagles could really pull this off. My gut says Seahawks, but I think I'm going to go with history and say Eagles here.
Okay, good stuff. The total here, though, 46. Over or under, Garion?
Yeah, and this is down from 48 as recently as yesterday. So a lot of people like the under here. Probably has something to do with the weather, which I'm sure Steve will touch on later, so I won't hit on it now. But, yeah, I think you have to go towards the under here. As Jeff kind of alluded to, these are two teams that are just relatively slowly paced. The Eagles obviously are missing a lot of their offensive weapons. That has to be factored in here. And historically, Eagles games go under when they play at home. 13 of the last 18 home games for the Eagles in Philadelphia have gone under the number. So give me the under here.
Jeff, which way are you leaning?
I still like the under at 46. I still like it quite a bit as far as totals go this week. How is Philly going to score the ball, first of all? I mean, I just don't know. I think that Bobby Wagner could get in Zach Ertz's face here and make things difficult there. Both these teams play at bottom 10 pace, too. I mean, these are two teams who want to slow things down. 46 points is quite a bit. Only worry here is if Seattle ends up blowing them out, I think. But I still like the under quite a bit.
By the way, Alshon Jeffrey officially inactive, Jeff.
There you go.
Rosalie, over or under?
Yeah, I'm with the guys. I'm going under here. Again, they've said it all already. There's just not, I think it's going to be a very slow-paced game with a lot of sludging through it. You're going to see a lot of Chris Carson. They're going to try to control the clock on each side. So, yeah, it's got to go under.
Russell Wilson is the most expensive quarterback on the main slate, $6,800, but has been held to under DK points in 3 of his last 4 games. So, Rosalie, are you paying up for Wilson today?
It's hard to go against Russell Wilson, but when you look at all of his big games, they've come against New Orleans, Rams, Cleveland, and Tampa Bay. But then he had 17 and a half fantasy points last week versus a very good San Francisco defense. But that was because he had 53 yards rushing. I don't think that he's going to get that with the Eagles this week. He had an interception and a fumble. But, Philly's not great on the turnover, so I'm not too worried about that. But Philly's been really rough against QBs at home. Other than Case Keenum in week 1, they've really shut down the quarterbacks at home. So I think I'm either paying down for Baker or I'm going to buy into Matt Ryan for $100 less.
Jeff, you paying up for Wilson?
No. Whenever you can get Russell Wilson on a low sentiment week, you got to at least consider him. But I just don't like the spot. I mean, again, I think Gary makes a good point. Seattle's probably still going to try and run the ball here. And then Philly really wants to keep this game slow with all their offensive weapons out. And they did a good job against a Patriots team that's, a good team in their own right in that regard last week. So I really see this as a slower pace, under the number game. I just feel like there's a lot of cheap quarterbacks in play this week. I don't really feel the need to stuff in Russell Wilson.
Gary, and any chance you're riding with Wilson?
No, I mean, like Jeff alluded to, this isn't a knock on Wilson, who, when you get him at a low ownership, is generally a very good play. But if you're paying up at a position this week, I'd much rather pay up at running back and spend down at quarterback. And if you're paying up at quarterback specifically, I'd much rather use Matt Ryan, who I just think is locked in against Tampa Bay. And you can question the level of competition for Philadelphia across this span, because it's been Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky, and Tom Brady in, some pretty bad weather last week. But they've only been giving up 4.7 opponent passing yards per attempt the last 3 weeks. That's the best mark in all of football. So this passing defense has clearly gotten a bit better as the season has rolled along. And that's always been the case, as Rosalie mentioned, when they're playing in Philadelphia. So this is not a great week for Wilson.
All right, friends, next up, let's move to the NFC South. You got the Saints, 9.5-point favorites over the Panthers at home there in the Dome. Jeff, you trust the Saints enough for them to actually win by double digits?
I think the Saints are going to win this game, but double digits, I'm not going to take the bait here. I really feel like this spread's a little bit too big. The Saints haven't really been that great a cover team at home. It kind of probably shocks people. They've actually been a better cover team on the road. And obviously we're getting Carolina at kind of their lowest sentiment here, coming off that brutal game last week. But remember, this is a team that almost beat Green Bay on the road the week before that. So I really feel like the Carolina defense can come up here with some, especially with their pass rush, can put a little bit of pressure and just make things a little bit difficult for the Saints to score. And I definitely feel like Kyle Allen could be in a bounce back spot. 10 points, I just feel like Carolina's offense and just in general as a team is too good to be giving that many points. So I'm going to take the Panthers here.
Okay, who are you going to take, Garion?
This does feel like a massive line. At the same time, I just think the strengths of the Saints really lean in against the weaknesses of the Panthers. I mean, we've been talking about this for the last 4 or 5 weeks now, but Carolina still ranks dead last against the run by DVOA. Conversely, the Saints have the best run-blocking offensive line in football. They are generating over 5 adjusted line yards per carry, by far the most in football. I just think Carolina's not going to be able to stop the Saints from doing what they want to do in this game. I think the Saints are going to control the football, control time of possession, and I do think they can win this game by 10 points.
All right, Rosalie, Saints 6-2 against the spread. Their past 8 games against the Panthers.
Yeah, I think the real question here with the Saints covering this spread is, can the defense contain Carolina? Because we know the Saints can score and they will score. So can they control the clock and can they stop CMC? Because Kyle Allen's not going to get it done. If you take a look at what he's done over the past 2 weeks, 93 passes, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions. New Orleans definitely wins the turnover ratio there. They're +8, which is 4th in the league. So I think we're going to see a little bit more Kyle Allen interception fumble situations. I think that New Orleans can cover this spread. If you look at it historically, New Orleans absolutely owns Carolina, but in order to see them cover the spread, you have to go back to 2017, but I think that it happens in this game. I think that New Orleans does get a defensive touchdown, controls the clock. Alvin Kamara has a big game.
This one's total is 46. Gary, and over or under?
I'm going to take the under. Jeff sort of alluded to this off the top, but the Saints have not been as fantastic as the past would have you believe when they play games at home. And that's really more specific to their offense than their defense. Under has been the way their last or 5 of their last 7 home games have gone. The Saints also have the second slowest pace in the NFL. I really do think they're just going to run the ball as much as they can, really just control the clock and bleed out this Panthers team. I'm looking at this like a 24-10 kind of game.
Rosalie, are you thinking over or under?
Yeah, I'm going under as well. You look at it historically, and both teams, when the over/under is this high, they tend to not cover more so than they do cover. Plus, again, we talked about this is going to be a run-first game. We know that New Orleans can score. You know, they're going to be Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. There's going to be a lot of those guys. But the only thing that Carolina can point to is Christian McCaffrey, who I think does have a good game, but I don't think that they get anywhere close to 46.
Jeff, over or under?
Yeah, not my favorite total to bet on, but I take the under here too. Look, if I'm wrong and Carolina sucks, they're not going to score many points. On the other hand, if their defense plays well, you know, they might limit New Orleans enough to keep this under. So I do like the under on this one.
All right, guys, starting to run a little tight on time. Let's pick up the pace. This game features the 2 most expensive running backs on the slate. Christian McCaffrey, 10.5. Alvin Kamara, more than $2,000 less at $8,200. Which one is the better bang for your buck, Rosalie?
I really like both these guys, but if I'm going purely based on consistency, it's got to be CMC. He's only been under 25 fantasy points twice this season. He's matchup proof.
Jeff?
I'll just lean Kamara just because he's coming off a 10-target game. He's going up against one of the weakest rush defenses in the league. But quite frankly, both these players are still in great spots for big games. It's just Kamara's a little bit cheaper. I think it's probably value-wise, I'd go Kamara. Same
value between these two, Garion?
Yeah, I'm going to have to lean with Kamara here. And it is the price differential, which we can't ignore. $2,000 is a lot of money to be spending in other positions. And like Jeff said, the last 2 games, actually, he's had 20 targets. CMC's had 21. But if anyone's going to be in that class and be $2,000 cheaper, just give me that guy in the better matchup.
The Raiders will take their 3-game win streak on the road this week to take on the Jets. DK Sportsbook gives the Raiders a 3-point edge in this one. Jeff, who do you like to cover?
The Jets are at home. Their defense is actually going a little bit under the radar right now. I feel like the Raiders' rush defense is going to get exposed a little bit here. I like the Jets.
Garion.
I agree with Jeff. The Jets have covered at home 7 of their last 10 games against a team with a winning record. The Raiders have been a different team on the road so far this season. And look, if there were ever a game the Raiders were going to blow and just have this thing completely go up in flames, it's a road game against the Jets.
Rosalie.
Yeah, I agree with the guys. You look at it historically as well. The Jets cover more often than the Raiders do. Jets cover at home more often than the Raiders do away. So I like the Jets here.
Rosalie, Le'Veon Bell, quietly been solid here for the Jets' past 3 games. Do you like him for 6,400 this week?
I actually do. I think this might be a Bell breakout game for us. He has been solid, quiet, but very, very solid and efficient. Oakland, they give up 28.7 fantasy points to running backs when they're away. It's risky on a team that the Jets just had their first 100-yard rushing game last week, and it was against Washington. So how much can we trust that? But if I'm going to take a flyer on anybody, it's going to be Le'Veon Bell.
Jeff, a Bell breakout game.
Yeah, no, definitely in the cards here. I don't think he's a cash game must because Adam Gase is still his coach. But look, the Raiders have been really regressing in the rush defense department. Rosalie's right, they're worse on the road. I definitely like the Bell-Jets DST combo in GPPs on DraftKings this week.
Garion, your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell?
He's fine. I'm not looking to get heavy exposure, but I'm okay if he kind of falls into one of my lineups. The Jets' offensive line is still terrible. 3 of every 4 touchdowns scored against the Raiders are through the air. And Bell only played 55% of the snaps last week, which that's Le'Veon Bell's thing, is he just plays every snap. And if he doesn't have that, I'm kind of having identity crisis. I don't even know about him. So it's fine. I'm just not super excited about it.
All right, guys. 2 viewer questions we're going to get to right now. Jeff, is wind a factor for Baker Mayfield today?
I don't think it's going to be a huge factor. I mean, Baker's got a good arm. The matchup is just so good. I just would not worry too much about the weather. If it's just a little bit of wind, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal.
Rosalie, Tevin Coleman or Mark Ingram?
Oh, Ingram all day. Baltimore, yeah, give me.
All right, don't worry, Gary. We're going to ask you a question a little later,
We will.
Good stuff, though, guys. Going to get to the rest of the 1 o'clock games coming up in a couple minutes. Lots more to come on the Sweat. I'm also going to talk to some of our sportsbook managers from around the country about kind of what they're seeing today.
But first, let's see who's getting their odds boosted in the Underdog parlay of the week.
Hey, what's going on? Last chance to soak up some early morning rays here before the big competition, King of the Beach. Oh, yep. Hey! 75 qualifiers, $1.5 million in prize money. Everybody's setting their lineups except for this guy dinking around with the ball. But we're going to have you covered on all this stuff on the DK social channels. Don't go anywhere. Guys? You said you were coming back. Guys?
Hey, it's Brendan again, here for the Underdog parlay of the week. Rufus is back. Remember him? All the way back from week 2? Well, if you don't, he's back, and he's ready to pick more underdogs that we're giving an odds boost on DK Sportsbook. This week's choices are the Redskins, who host the Lions, parlayed with the Buccaneers, who face the Falcons. Next, we've got the Bengals hosting the Steelers, combined with the Broncos, who take on the Bills. And our final parlay is the Packers, who take on the Niners on Sunday Night Football, paired with the Jets, who are at home when the Raiders come to town. Let's see who Rufus likes this week. Rufus picked the Redskins Bucks parlay. So head over to DK Sportsbook and take advantage of this odds boost now.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Sweat, where we are going to hit the books right now. We are giving you an inside look at what's happening at DraftKings Sportsbooks across the United States of America. Good morning to Hal Tendler, Sportsbook Manager at Resorts Atlantic City. Andy Crone, Sportsbook Supervisor at Wild Rose Resorts Emmitsburg, plus Sportsbook for DK. And Nicole Beauvert, Del Lago Sportsbook Manager. Ladies first, Nicole, your local team, the Bills, hosting the Broncos today. Where is most of the money coming in on this game?
Yeah, so the spread on this game is actually smaller than you would think, with the Bills only giving up 3.5 points. But the Broncos did look pretty good last week against Minnesota. However, the Bills are 5-0 against the spread in their last meetings with the Broncos, and we have some pretty diehard fans here, so people are sticking with the Bills.
All right, so what's the biggest bet you've seen today, Nicole?
The biggest bet we've seen today is a $20,000 wager to pay out $22,000. It was a 3-team teaser that included Detroit, Seattle, and Atlanta.
Okay, moving over to Hal Tendler here, who's in AC. Jets, Giants, Eagles, all playing in that 1 o'clock window. Which one are you seeing the most action on?
Believe it or not, most of the locals are betting the Eagles, but the biggest bet, it came in with a 5-figure bet on Seattle money line at even money. So he put up $10,045 to win $10,045.
Andy Crone, which team is bringing the most bets at your book?
With Minnesota being off this week, most of our action today has been on Giants to cover against Chicago and San Francisco to cover against Green Bay.
All right, what's the biggest parlay you've had at the Wild Rose today?
We took a 5-leg all money line on Seahawks, Panthers, Broncos, Dolphins, and Bucks. We'll pay that better, about $36,000 if it hits. So good luck.
Yeah, right on, man. All right, gentlemen and lady, have a great Thanksgiving. We will talk to you guys next Sunday. We got more 1 o'clock games to discuss with our analysts right after I talked to former Patriot Christian Fourier about what's about to go down between the Patriots and Cowboys. Dallas comes to Gillette on Sunday. I mean, what scares you the most about the Cowboys?
I would say, well, offensively, I mean, great rushing attack, which I think is their biggest issue.
Right, because you've seen a few of these running backs recently here with these teams the Patriots have been going up against, and those running backs have just kind of gone wild.
I think they'll probably be going against one of the best offensive lines they've played all year. Big, physical, emphasis on running. Another quarterback, and I tell you, Dak's been playing great.
Yeah, he looked really good on Sunday.
Good wide receiver. So they'll be challenged in every single aspect of the game. Now, I don't know what Jason Garrett's going to do, because to me, that's you talk about those 4 aspects.
Yeah.
So you got an offense. I think they're legit. Defensively, I think they're average at best. Special teams, they're okay. But the definite edge is coaching. I think Jason Garrett, Kellen Moore calling the plays. I think that could be a situation where he gets outwitted and outplayed. So, but definitely some unique challenges. And every week, I don't know if you see this also, but it always gets the challenge and the circumstances, they always get tougher. So we thought Philly was tough. Which is what it doesn't feel like the Dallas is tougher.
Yeah.
Like as good as Philly is.
Those two teams are neck and neck in their division.
Yeah. So we can actually do Philly a favor. We can actually bring this back to to a status quo for both those teams. Yeah, we do. They need to because Baltimore is an issue.
Welcome back to The Sweat. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan, Reed Fowler, and Greg Ehrenberg are here as we continue to make our way through the rest of the 1 p.m. games. Let's get to it. The Falcons are coming off that big win over the Panthers last week. They're 3.5-point favorites this week when they host the Bucs. Steve, do you trust Atlanta to cover?
I mean, Atlanta absolutely decimated the Panthers last week, broke my soul, broke my ego, broke everything that I loved in life. And now here I am talking about them again this week. I know they look like a much better team defensively. I know Tampa Bay is one of the worst against the spread at 2-8 on the season, but I feel like this is just the consensus is so high on Atlanta right now. I just don't trust it. I do like Tampa Bay to cover on this spot instead. I do like the weapons that they have there. I do like a lot of the matchups that they have. Jameis Winston is a massive liability, so it's hard to really trust either side here, but I'm rolling with Tampa Bay.
Reed, breaking Bukes. What do you think?
I was going to say broke his bank as well, break his life. Wow. No, I'm with Steve here. Look, the Bucs are worse at home covering the spread than they are on the road. They're 2-3 ATS, and so. Oh, can you guys hear me? No?
Nope.
No.
Now.
Well,
yeah.
I agree with Steve. Tampa Bay covers.
All right, Greg, where do you go on this one? Nope, we can't hear you either. Volume.
What day is it?
All right, cool. I'm unmuted.
There we go.
So I'm going to go against these guys. I actually like Atlanta in this spot. Their defense has looked pretty good recently, and it's been in tough matchups. They did it against the Panthers and Christian McCaffrey. They did it against the Saints. They were able to shut them down. And I understand that Jameis Winston is super high variance quarterback, and he could kind of play well or poorly in any kind of matchup. I think this is a good spot for the Falcons defense. I think they also make sense as a contrarian DFS play.
All right, this game's total is 51.5, the largest of the week. Reed, are you going over or under?
Yeah, I'm going over. Even if Jameis does throw his 3 picks or 4 picks, what have you, they still toss the ball around the yard. And in the meetings between these two teams, it's 5-1 hitting the over in the last 6. So yeah, give me the over.
Greg, over or under?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the under here. It's still the same thing. The Falcons defense has played well recently. I think this is a spot where Jameis Winston could really get in trouble and throw some interceptions. Now, for DFS perspective, there is merit to stacking this in GPPs, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a high floor for this game. I think the ceiling is high, but the floor is really low. There's a good chance this is a lower scoring game.
Where are you going, Steve?
Yeah, so Tampa Bay 8-2 on hitting the over this year, which is the best in the league. The Falcons are actually one of the worst at 3-7, but a lot of this has to do with, I feel like, with the turnovers from Jameis Winston. There's probably going to be plenty of those in this game. There's a lot of good matchups on both receivers against opposing secondaries. There's a lot to like in this game. I think this is a total that can still go over. 2 high-powered offenses that are no strangers throwing the ball, so I like the over in this one.
Calvin Ridley went ham last week for 31 DK points. Subsequently, his price has gone up $1,000 to $6,500. Greg, would you pay that?
So as a standalone, I don't think he makes for a good value, but where he does make sense is leverage off of a chalky Julio Jones, because he's probably going to be the highest owned wide receiver today. For the price, I wouldn't play him in cash games, and overall for the value, I think that Julio Jones does make for a safer play in cash games. And I would probably rather go down to Gage also for the price.
Steve, what do you think?
So the biggest difference for me is that there's no Austin Hooper in the mix here. And with the no Austin Hooper, Calvin Ridley sees a 6% increase in his target share, which brings him up to just about 20. And without Hooper on the field, he has the highest ADOT on the team at 16.1. So kind of put all that together here, and we have a Tampa Bay team that has struggled against wide receiver twos. We just saw DK Metcalf go for over 30 fantasy points against this same defense. I think there's a lot of things to like about Ridley. I like Greg's point a lot about him being a pivot off of what's going to be a very chalky Julio Jones. I think both of those guys are in a good spot, but in tournaments, I think Ridley's a really good play this week.
Reed, where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, same with the points these guys made. If you look at Tampa Bay in their secondary, they're giving up the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So all of these guys are in play, but if you want to pivot, go to Ridley.
The Bears are favored by 6 this week when the Giants come to town. Who covers, Steve?
I'm so lost here. I mean, the Bears are one of the worst teams against the spread. They're 3-7 on the year. They're averaging about 13 points over their last 3 games. So now, right off the jump, we're going to give them 6 points? Give me a break. Like, this makes no sense. I'm 100% on the Giants in this game. Like, we have Saquon Barkley, who looks healthy. The Bears. The Bears. That's who we're going to back in this one? Give me a break. No. Giants.
Reed. Steve is freaking out.
Scared to give my take here. The Giants have lost 5 straight, Steve. Maybe that's why. But look, like the Bears, like I don't care. The Bears are equally as bad. But the best unit on this entire game is going to be that Chicago defense. So I'm taking Chicago.
Greg, where are you going?
Well, I definitely don't want to upset Steve, so I'm going to go with the Giants in this spot. If we look at Daniel Jones, he has been pretty good for backdoor covers, and he is a talented quarterback. He makes a lot of mistakes, which could be an issue against Chicago. But I can't trust Chicago's offense to score any points in this spot either. So it should be a lower scoring game, and for a game that probably won't have that much scoring, it's hard to think a team wins by more than a touchdown.
So we're saying there probably won't be that much scoring, small total here, just 40 projected points. Can they hit the over, Reed?
No. Like I said, the Bears defense is strong, and we've seen Daniel Jones have his fair share of turnovers and getting sacked. And when you look at this defensive line in Chicago, even without Hakeem Nicks, they're still strong. So I like the under here.
Greg, I'm assuming you're going under.
Yeah, I like the under. The only real concern here is defensive touchdowns. Daniel Jones could throw a couple interceptions. Maybe he just throws the ball backwards and becomes a fumble that the Bears bring back for a touchdown. But if that's not the case, then these offenses probably aren't going to score all that many points.
Steve, going under?
Yeah, I agree with Greg here. I think the only way that this kind of gets ruined is if we do have some defensive touchdowns here. But otherwise, we have a very good pass rush for the Bears. We have a very good pass rush for the, run defense for the Giants. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that you don't like for either team to score here. But the Giants are still going to win. I don't care what the total is. Giants are still going to win.
David Montgomery was fantastic in weeks 8 and 9, but was held to just 6 points in each of his last 2 games. So, Greg, would you play him this week?
Yeah, well, fantastic is relative because I'm not going to play him, but he's really relying on touchdowns. Montgomery's only averaging 3.5 yards per carry this year. He's not an efficient running back. He's also in a timeshare with Tariq Cohen. Really what needs to happen is he needs to get in the end zone to hit fantasy value. And the issue is we don't think this game's going to be very high scoring, so that makes Montgomery a fade for me.
Steve, talk to me.
Well, the other thing is, too, is that if you like me, like what I'm thinking, that the Giants are going to win here, there's no clear path for Montgomery to be efficient in this game if they're not going to be running the ball. He hasn't had more than 4 catches in a game, more than 36 receiving yards. So if that's the type of bar that we're setting here for Montgomery, and then he's not going to be rushing the ball, where is he going to score his points here? So I think he's a complete fade for me. Like, I understand if you think the Bears are going to win this one because, they're favored by 6. But, I mean, it's just not going to happen, so you're not going to play Montgomery either.
Reed, would you play him?
I think he's a good GPP, like big tournament play. Because of what these guys have said, I don't think a lot of the sentiment's going to be on David Montgomery. But the game script is there, right? They're heavy favorites at home. And so when you have Montgomery, who doesn't have that designation of having that ankle injury coming into this game, I think he's a solid pivot. Now, are you going to be overweight in cash games? Absolutely not. But I don't mind him as a pivot.
Let's go to the ugly matchup between the Steelers and Bengals. DK Sportsbook has the Steelers as 6.5-point favorites. Can they cover that, Steve?
Yeah, I think they can cover this one. Like, I know what this is. Relax, Reed. He's already shaking his head. Let me talk first. Like, I know these are 2 really ugly teams, but then we have the Bengals who are just 4-6 against the spread. And then when they don't cover, they're not covering by the largest margin in the league by just over 10 points here. So I know this game's going to be very ugly. It's really hard for both teams to score in this spot here, but are the Bengals going to stop the run for Pittsburgh? I don't think so. So if Pittsburgh gets up to a decent amount of lead, that's all they really need here to win this one and to cover. So I do like the Steelers in this spot.
Reed, you were shaking your head.
Yeah, a ton of injuries on Pittsburgh's side, and it's Mason Rudolph leading. A guy hasn't scored over 16 DK fantasy points, but in real life, he's not a good quarterback either. So I don't think they cover.
All right, Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, so kind of a similar sentiment to the Bears-Giants game, where if a game's going to be really high scoring, really low scoring, it's difficult to expect the team to win by a touchdown or more. And this could very easily be a super ugly, like 10-6 game or 6-3 or something like that. So I'll take the Bengals with the points with very little confidence.
This one's total is 37.5. Reed, over or under?
Under. Like I mentioned earlier, we have Juju out, Pouncey the center out. We have a lot of guys injured, James Conner. If you just look at the Steelers, they've just hit the under a ton, especially after a loss. So I'm going to say under.
Greg, do you want the under too?
Yeah, the under. Both these teams are going to run the ball a ton. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of action. Not a lot of plays run in this game. It's going to keep the score down.
Steve, any chance you're going with the over?
No, the Steelers have the best pass rush in the league. Ryan Finley has dropped back 73 times. He's already been under pressure on 42 of those, taking 7 sacks. He's going to have a lot of trouble moving the ball, so they're just going to be running this one. Like Greg said, this is a 100% under.
Joe Mixon has been coming around, at least 17 DK points in 3 straight games. Are you playing him for 5,900 today, Greg?
So I'm not going to. I think there was a spot to play Mixon like last week against the Raiders, which was a really favorable matchup, and he was cheaper. But now the Steelers' defense has played pretty well this year. He's more expensive. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of scoring or plays run in this game. He's a fade for me.
Steve, what do you think?
There's too many guys in that same price point that I'd much rather play over Joe Mixon. You got Le'Veon Bell, James White, Kareem Hunt, all in that same vicinity. The only thing I will say about Mixon, though, is that he apparently doesn't get scripted out, because when they're getting blown out by the Ravens, they'll still run the ball 30 times with him. I don't know what on earth was going on there, but, apparently he's script-proof is what we've come to the conclusion. But I'm just not a big fan here. I'd much rather take some of those other guys that I just named in place of Mixon.
Where are you going, Reed?
Yeah, the same sentiment as Greg. I mean, if you look at just what they've been able to do, I mean, in this spot, his price point is just too high, and there's other guys, like even Latavius Murray in GPPs, I think is a good play in that matchup. And James White and some other guys like Singletary below him are much better. So yeah, I'm going to be off of him.
All right, guys, we have time for 2 quick viewer questions. Steve, will Bo Scarborough get significant playing time?
I mean, we talked about this on the show prior on SNY. I think he's the number 1 back here. McKissick's not going to get the carries. Ty Johnson is not going to get the carries here against a defense that is very vulnerable to the run. I do like using him this week.
Reed, Amari Cooper or James Washington?
Ooh, looks like Deontay Johnson's going to be back in that game, and that game in New England's going to be tough, but I still have to go with Cooper.
All right, guys, quick break here. We'll be back to talk about the final 1 p.m. games in a couple minutes. And all of you watching us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, make sure to get your questions in. We're going to answer as many as we can. In the meantime, here's our buddy, Nick Eatman.
Fair to say the aerial attack takes a back seat to Zeke Elliott this weekend in Foxborough when you consider A, New England's back end is scary good, and B, the Pats defense struggles against these up-the-gut, pounded-up-the-middle style running backs?
Well, I'm hesitant. The Cowboys haven't faced the Patriots a ton every 4 years, and I'm hesitant to say, what it's going to be against what New England does. That's what makes Belichick so great. He doesn't just change week to week. He can change within a game, series to series. And so, yeah, we've seen some looks where the Patriots have a lot of linebackers out there. They look pretty small at times, but, I don't foresee them doing that a lot in this situation because it'll come up with something different. So, that's the beauty of going up against the Patriots is that it just when you think you figured out what type of team they are or defense they are, they switch it up on you. They're a really smart, disciplined team, and the Cowboys have said that. The players kind of recognize that. So I don't know. I don't know what to really expect except for a good, sound defense that flies around the ball will probably give Dak and the offensive look that they haven't seen a lot of.
There's a national narrative developing that teams are not afraid anymore to play against the Patriots. And you said it 4 years since these two teams last met up. From what you've gathered at practice, I know Jason Garrett's on record speaking about Coach Belichick and Tom Brady. How do you think the team has handled the challenge of facing the reigning Super Bowl champion?
Well, I think you just have to go through the parentheses of each team. And when they have those parentheses that say, 9-1, that kind of goes to show what kind of football team you're facing. I mean, you can say, oh, we're not scared of them at all, but that's cool. But, one team is beating them. The Ravens didn't look scared, and then they showed it. Now, I know that they're not blowing some teams out, and lately it's been a little bit of a different way that they're getting the job done. But I think the Cowboys have the utmost respect for the Patriots. I don't know how you could not. And even though it may not be as masterful, they're 9-1, and they have the best record, of course, in the AFC, and they're the best team the Cowboys have faced by far. The Cowboys haven't beaten a team that has a winning record. So, they're about to face the best football team we've seen over the last 20 years. And, so I think that the respect is there, and the Cowboys know that they're up for a huge challenge, especially in Foxborough when the Patriots haven't lost in almost 3 years.
Okay, we've made it to the final 2 early games on the slate. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Gary and Thorne, the Fantasy Girl Rosalie Michaels, they are here. Let's dive right in. The Browns, the biggest favorites of the week. when they host the Dolphins. Sorry, Garion. Jeff, can Cleveland cover the 10.5-point spread?
Yeah, I think Cleveland's going to win big in this game. This is such a mismatch on so many levels. Obviously, the Dolphins are going to be without basically their entire secondary today. But then you just look at the O-line versus D-line. I mean, Cleveland is top 10 in adjusted sack rate D-line. The Dolphins are last as far as their offensive line goes in that same metric. This I know Myles Garrett is out, but this is Cleveland at home. All things considered, Baker Mayfield's no interceptions over his last 3 games against actual tough defenses too. I think that's what people are overlooking. I think the Browns are going to absolutely roll the Dolphins today.
Yeah, Gary, and I believe the Dolphins are pretty bad in cold temperatures as well.
They're just bad. They're bad when it's hot. They're bad when it's cold. This is what that team is meant to do.
Yeah.
Look, I think this is too big a number. I just don't know what the Browns have done this season. It's fun to play the hypotheticals game. It's fun to say that Baker's looked better the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't looked good. It's a low bar to clear, that's for sure. Dolphins have been in mismatches every single week, and yet they still cover. They've covered a lot more than the Browns have so far this season. I look at this and I wonder with Cleveland, I understand they're at home. I understand this is the Dolphins, but they've scored more than 25 points twice this season. They're averaging fewer than 20 points per game. Like, this is just so many points for a team of that caliber to cover. And again, to like Jeff's point about the discrepancies in the offensive line and defensive line, the Browns are missing their 3 best pass rushers in this game. Like, I just don't think they've performed at a level where I'm comfortable taking them to win by 10 points.
Okay, so Rosalie, is this number too big in your eyes?
I think this is going to be surprising because I think Cleveland does cover this. Yeah, Garion was right. He made a lot of really good points, but he's forgetting that Miami's also missing their 3 starting secondary players. So you could totally see a number of Landry and OBJ touchdown bombs this week. Baker's been playing a little bit better. He's getting a little bit more confident. I think they need to come back from that game. They played well against Pittsburgh last week, a much better Pittsburgh team than Miami. Miami gives up way too many points on the road to think that Cleveland can't cover here. Miami's been playing a little bit better on offense too since Fitzpatrick came in. So I think they will score some points, but I think they cover this 10.5-point spread because I think there's going to be a number of touchdown bombs to those 2 guys.
Gary, you like the under here for this total of 45.5?
Yeah, if you're taking the Dolphins and the points, you kind of have to like the under because if this game goes over 45 points, the Browns are going to cover. The Dolphins just can't score that many points. Let's be perfectly frank. Again, though, when you look at the way the Browns have performed this season, sure, they looked fine against Pittsburgh, but their defense did all the work in that game. There was a point early in the third quarter where Cleveland, I think Steelers had maybe like 50 total yards of offense, and the Browns were still only up 7-0 because they cannot score. They've proven this time and time again. They are 24th in the league in points generated per drive. The Dolphins are second from the bottom. So, yeah, I'm going to take the under here.
Okay, Rosalie, what are you taking?
The Browns cannot score, except you're forgetting against a very good Ravens team. They put up 40 points. So
that
they
was
can
8
score.
weeks ago. That was 8 weeks ago.
It was weeks ago, but it's possible. It's possible. And now they get Miami, the 2nd worst defense in the league. I think they can. To your point, they've had 4 games over 20 points. I think this is their 5th game over 20 points. I think they score in the 30s, and I think that this does go over. I'm taking Browns minus 10.5 and the over.
All right, Jeff, where do you sit, bud?
I mean, let's not be too hard on the Browns. They faced Buffalo, Minnesota, Denver the last 3 weeks. My problem here, and I'm still taking the under, even though I really like Cleveland to cover, I don't think Miami's going to score more than 10 points. Like, the Cleveland defense is legit, and I know they're missing some starters. I don't think it's going to matter. They got their cover corners back. I'm going to take the under because I don't think Miami's going to score more than 10 points. So.
Nick Chubb, highest price all season. He's going to cost you $8,100. Rosalie, is he worth it?
I think this is a trap for Nick Chubb this week. Yeah, you're looking at Miami and it's 27 fantasy points, 2 running backs when they are away. Week 3, they gave up 43.7 fantasy points to Dallas, but 24.7 of those were to Pollard, not to Zeke Elliott. So I think that we're going to see a little bit more Hunt fantasy points here than we are Chubb fantasy points. It's not going to be terrible. It's not going to be awful. But I think that we're going to see Baker targeting, I said it before, OBJ and Landry and Hunt a little bit more. I think this is a trap for Chubb. I'll pay for Kamara for $100 more, or down to Derrick Henry at 6,900, who's coming on strong with 2 huge games, and now gets Jacksonville, who has given up a lot of fantasy points to running backs in the past few weeks.
Jeff, is he in a good enough spot to pay $8,100 for?
I think all the Browns' offensive players are in big upside spots. The problem is he's 8,100. His PPR production has gone down with Kareem Hunt. You have to decide, do you want Chubb and the Browns D, or do you just want to go to the air with Baker, OBJ, Hunt? I'd rather go to the air personally, but Chubb is definitely in play for GPPs. You just got to decide which one you want.
Okay, is he in play for this price, Garion?
No, I think Jeff's on the right track here. Ever since Kareem Hunt has inserted himself into the mix, Chubb's pass game production has just gone out the window. He's only had 2 targets the last 2 weeks, didn't have a single target in week 11. So sure, he could return value if he scores a couple of touchdowns in what should be a high touchdown expectancy spot against the Dolphins, but you'd just rather spend $100 and get Alvin Kamara, who is probably going to catch 9 passes today.
All right, let's go to the Broncos-Bills matchup here. DK Sportsbook favors the Bills by 4. Jeff, you think they can cover?
No, love the Broncos in this spot. It's a team that's covered 5 of their last 6 games. They started the season last in adjusted sack rate after the first 2 weeks. Now they're all the way up to 12th. This is a very, very good defense. Josh Allen, the Bills have struggled traditionally against good defenses. I think the Broncos cover and possibly even win outright.
Okay, Gary, and who covers?
Completely agree with Jeff. The Broncos are in a great spot today. And if you look by a lot of the advanced metrics, they've been calling the Bills frauds for the entirety of the season, most of that based on their schedule. But by DVOA, the Broncos are the 18th best team in football. The Bills are the 25th. So it's not even really all that close. It just, you get 3 points for being at home, cool. But the fact that the Bills are getting that extra point just doesn't make any sense at all. Even Broncos D at 2,400 on DraftKings is one of my favorite plays of the week. I love the Broncos in any capacity here.
All right, does this make sense to you, Rosalie?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. I like the Broncos here to cover. The Broncos, without Flacco, have been a much better offensive team. They've been scoring some points. Even against that good Minnesota defense 2 weeks ago, they were able to score a good amount of points. So I think this is going to be pretty close. I'm not saying who I think is going to win here, but I think it's going to be closer than the 4 points.
Hey, Gary, small total here, 37 points. So would you like to take the over or the under?
It's a ridiculously low number. I'll lean towards the under, but I don't feel as good about it as just betting the Broncos by the spread. Both these teams rank inside the top 10 in fewest points allowed and fewest yards allowed per drive. That's really nice. I'll take the under, but again, I'd rather just bet this by the spread.
Okay, what do you want to do, Rosalie?
I'm going the over on this just because it is so low. Yeah, these are 2 good defenses. But like I said, Broncos have been scoring some points against good defenses, and the Bills have been so disappointing. Every time I think they're going to have a good game, they don't. But 37 is so low that I think I just have to go over here.
Jeff, how comfortable are you with taking the under?
I'm not too comfortable with this total. I'd rather just bet the spread like Gary, and I'd probably lean over. I feel like even though both these defenses are probably good units, don't forget, like Cortland Sutton's in this game, John Brown, these 2 teams do have the playmakers to put up some points, and it's not like the Broncos have been good at shutting down games at the end, so you could see like a late touchdown by the Bills to push this into the over.
All right, many of the analysts on this program, guys, weren't very high on John Brown last week, and he ended up going off for 38 DK points. Rosalie, are you going to play him this week for 6,700?
Yeah, just the amount of targets that John Brown is getting, he's worth the price point, right? And like Jeff just said, I can see a long touchdown bomb to somebody. Guess who that somebody is? It's John Brown. So yeah, I like it. I think he's going to have a low ownership just because the over/under is so low. So yeah, I like John Brown at 6,700.
You like him at this price, Jeff?
Again, I mean, I'll take the L from last week, but colder weather, tougher defense this week. I think if I was going to take a shot on a player like this, I'd probably go down to Golladay, who's just got a terrific matchup and is going to be really low owned as well. So I guess I'll fade him again, and I'll just take the L ×2 on Monday.
Yeah, Gary, and this Broncos secondary, pretty decent.
Yeah, he's probably going to draw coverage from Chris Harris Jr. for most of the game. And look, the Broncos have not been as good on a per-target basis against opponent wide receivers since about week 5. They've been kind of middle of the pack. But at the same time, you look at the tier he's now in, it's $6,700. You could pay $300 more and get Odell at $7,000. And I think really Jeff brought up the most important name in this tier, which is Kenny Golladay, who no one is going to have at $6,600 in a fantastic matchup. So I just think those two guys present higher ceilings.
You guys mentioned Kenny Golladay. Let's go to that game, the Lions and the Redskins. Let's see, Jeff, Lions are -3.5. Can they cover that on the road?
I'm going to go with the Redskins here. I just don't trust the Lions enough. Everyone wants to pick on the Redskins defense, but like the Lions are just as bad. They are just as bad. They have no pass rush, and Trey Flowers is out for this game. They have a banged up secondary outside of Darius Slay. I think Dwayne Haskins is going to have some time, and I think he's going to be at least able to keep this within 3 points. So I'm going to take the Redskins to cover.
Gary.
I mean, I'll be honest. This is basically a stay away for me. These are two bad teams. I don't feel good about laying that many points with Jeff Driscoll as a road quarterback. Though I will say, home dogs are only 26 and 26 ATS this season. So it's not like there's a huge discrepancy towards just betting home underdogs in 2019. One thing I think you have to think about, though, if you're heavy into the Lions, is just how scary a concept the Lions' awful run defense is. They are 5th worst in the league in adjusted line yards per opponent rush. And all the Redskins want to do is run the football. So they might actually have success with that game plan this week against the Lions.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Chris Thompson, like the Redskins are going to be forced to play Darius Geis today because everyone else is banged up. So good thing for the Redskins.
Rosalie, who covers?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Geis is a great play this week. But, it's Washington. You're not trusting that Detroit's going to score enough points, but Washington gave up 34 points to the Jets. So I definitely think that Detroit, who has been scoring points against much worse defenses, against Dallas, against Oakland, which is decent, and against Minnesota, they're scoring points against those teams. So they definitely can score points against Washington, and 3.5 is not that much. So I'm taking Detroit here.
Guys, we're up against the break, so we got to get some quick answers here. Jeff Driscoll was a great play last week, 27 DK points for just $4,600. He's up to 5.5 this week. Rosalie, would you play him?
Driscoll is the shiny penny. It's what people like because he scored well last week, but I'm not buying into it. Yeah, you're looking at, again, Washington gives up a lot of fantasy points. He may be chalky, though, not quite as sneaky. So the over-under at 41, I'm just not buying into Driscoll this week. I think he doesn't score that many points.
Jeff?
I'm absolutely fine with it. There's actually 3 or 4 quarterbacks that I like. I like Nick Foles, DJ Chark, but if you're going to play Golladay, play him with Jeff Driscoll. Is absolutely in play. He's good rushing totals. That's always a big factor in fantasy.
Go ahead, Garen.
I mean, I knew going after Jeff he was going to steal my point, but just play Nick Foles. Just play Nick Foles.
Okay, noted. Remarkable job, everyone. We're moving on to the late games after a Sunday night showdown preview, courtesy of our friends at KFC.
Week 12 is upon us, and so is a big game between the Packers and 49ers. This is the Sunday Night Showdown presented by KFC. Tyrone Azak alongside Alex Jankowski. 2 great teams here. 9-win San Francisco, 8-win Green Bay. Who's your Colonel's pick for that captain spot in this one?
Going to Aaron Jones, Green Bay Packers running back, and the hashtag free Aaron Jones movement is upon us this year. 3 touchdowns his last time out on the ground, and he's doing it in the passing game as well. Aaron Rodgers is often looking to him as that kind of safety valve. He's getting the ball in the red zone also. So in years past, when that was just Devontae Adams who was getting the ball in the red zone, Aaron Jones is getting his chance to get touchdowns as well. San Francisco, middle of the pack in terms of defending the run, so look for more Aaron Jones goodness this weekend.
Okay, so we've got your Colonel. Who are you plugging into your lineup with him?
I'm going to pair him with the Packers DST. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't looked great of late. 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles lost over his past 2 games. And we've seen it in these primetime games every single week. There is going to be a defensive unit who goes off, scores a touchdown, gets multiple turnovers. And I think if I'm picking between the two, I'm going to go with the Packers defense against Jimmy Garoppolo rather than the 49ers defense against Aaron Rodgers.
Thanks, Alex. That'll do it for the latest edition of the Sunday Night Series presented by KFC. Try KFC's 2 for $6 deal today. Choose any of these 2 KFC favorites for only $6. Famous Bowl, pot pie, extra crispy tenders, and a crispy Colonel sandwich. They're finger licking good. All right, guys, earlier this week, we introduced our Caption This contest on the Sweat's Twitter page at the Sweat DK. We asked you to caption this picture of Lamar Jackson for a shot at $100 DK. And the winner of the contest is TL10 Swish 75, who wrote,
Tom L.
When you're told that you are the 3rd best in the game, in reality, you're number 1. Congrats, you are now the proud owner of $100 DK.
Good for you, Tom. Time now to turn our attention to the pair of late games on the slate. So for that, we have DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Steve Buchanan, and Greg Ehrenberg here with us. We have questions. We need you to deliver answers.
Best game of the afternoon is the Cowboys at the Patriots. New England is favored by 5.5. Can they cover, Greg?
Well, lots of competition for the best game of the afternoon. So
Okay, sassy.
I do think that New England can cover in this spot. Dallas has been really difficult to predict this season. They've been really up and down. And generally, I just can't trust them at playing against elite competition. Playing in New England, New England's defense has been ridiculous this year, number 1 overall in DVOA. I think they are going to be able to shut down the Cowboys' offense, and I think that the Patriots' offense will do just enough to be able to cover the spread.
Steve, what do you think?
So this spread has been all over the place. It opened at 6.5. It got down to 4.5 as recently as yesterday. Now it's at 5.5. I just don't feel great about the Patriots here. They have a lot of injuries that they're dealing with. We saw Tom Brady pop up on the injury report with the elbow injury late in the week. We have Mohamed Sanu.
Steve.
Yes?
Steve.
What?
Tom Brady on the injury report. You're putting any stock into that? He's been on the injury report as questionable for entire seasons. It doesn't mean anything.
Greg, don't ever do that again.
Oh my God.
So Tom Brady popped up on the injury report late in the week with an elbow injury. We have Mohamed Sanu, who's not going to be in this game. Philip Dorsett, we're still waiting for the status on him. Like, this is a game that is just going to be dumping off to Julian Edelman and James White. This is a very good Dallas defense with their secondary. I don't feel great about the Patriots here. And Greg, you're lucky you live where you are, because if you were here, it would be over. Just let you know.
Gary, and keep that in mind, yeah.
Oh, man. If I had a nickel for every Patriot fan who hated the Patriots every single week, I'd have so many nickels. Also, if I had a nickel for every time Tom Brady popped up on the injury report when he was not injured. Look, Dallas has been awful this season when they've had to play a good team. I think even Steve would let me call New England a good team. They've been all right. So they are 0-6 their last 6 games against a team above 500. They are 1-4 ATS their last 5 games against a team above 500 on the road. And that's another factor. Dallas, their offense specifically has just performed so much better inside the comfy confines of Jerry's Fortress down there in Dallas. I just think the Patriots are going to win pretty handily here.
Okay, the point total, 44.5. Over or under, Steven?
Yeah, I'm going to roll with the under of this one. We have 2 teams that defensively don't give up a ton of points. 10.8 by the Patriots, 19.7 by the Cowboys. Going back to that whole injury thing, we'll leave Tom Brady out of the mix. Does that appease the 2 of you? We won't include Tom Brady in the injury mix. So we'll have Sanu, we'll have Dorsett, we'll have all these guys who are going to be missing this game. So I think this is going to be under here. Like, I don't see success on the ground for the Patriots running against the Cowboys. Definitely not on the Cowboys side against the Patriots. I think this is going to be a game that's going under.
Garion?
I know people have some weather concerns with a lot of the games on the East Coast. I can understand And like Steve said, I can't understand the Patriots do have some injuries to their skill position players. I also get the Patriots have been a fantastic defense so far this season, but at the same time, we're talking about the third and fourth highest scoring offenses in football. I don't know. This number seems low to me. I don't think this is a game that suddenly goes off for like 65 points, but I think these two teams can get to 50. I'm going to take the over here.
Gregory.
Yeah, we're really hitting all of Steve's pressure points today. We've got the Bears. We've got cutting them off. We've got Tom Brady on the
weather triggers him right away. Weather will do it every time.
Yep.
The weather is a little bit of a concern here, just because it is supposed to be raining really hard, and the wind is going to be a factor. And then of course the Tom Brady's only playing with one arm. These are all issues. But still, if we look at the Patriots over the last couple of years, a lot of their games have tended to trend towards unders. They played a little bit of a slower pace a lot of the time. And the other thing also, just their defense is really good this season. They're difficult to score on. I think the Cowboys are going to have a tough time moving the ball. And then, like Steve did mention on the Patriots side of the game, they do have a lot of injuries on offense. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a slower pace game. And it's going to be a game where teams kind of grind it out.
Ezekiel Elliott's price dropped way down, just $7,500 after being $9K last week. But that could be due to the matchup. So would you play him, Garion?
No, because I think the one kind of justification you could have for playing Zeke, aside from the fact he's an extremely talented running back in a high-scoring offense, generally, is that he'd be a differentiation play. But to that point, I think I'd rather just play Saquon Barkley for $400 more in a much better matchup against the Bears, who is going to be equally ignored because they're both sitting right under Alvin Kamara and Nick Chubb at just over $8,000. So if you're looking for a variance play, just use Barkley instead of Elliott.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm off Elliott also. I do think you can make a reasonable claim that there's value in him just because he's cheaper than usual. He's not going to have much ownership. But still, it's hard to see the upside because the Patriots' defense has been so good this season.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of echoing what Garion said. Like, I'm not on Elliott here either, but I think he does make for a very interesting tournament play. Like, when do you get Ezekiel Elliott at maybe 10% or less ownership? Like, this is really the matchup to do so. But the expectation for him is very low against a very stout Patriots run defense here. I'd much rather guys like Nick Chubb paying up there, or even Saquon Barkley. I think he's a really intriguing play here, who came off the injury report this week as well fully, so maybe he's fully healthy finally. This could be an interesting spot for him, but yeah, I think Elliott's not a play here this week.
All right, our final game on the main slate is actually the best game on the main slate. It's the Jaguars and the Titans, guys. Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite. Can the fighting Ryan Tannehills cover that, Greg?
I'm going to go with the Jaguars here. I still don't have a whole lot of faith in Ryan Tannehill, even though he has played extremely well since taking over as the Titans quarterback. It's to me, he's been so bad for so many years. Like, can I really look at these last few games and say, like, he should be favored by more than 3 points over a decent Jacksonville team? And to me, it's just no. I'm not buying into Tannehill yet.
Steve.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about Tannehill either. Tennessee 1-3-1 against the spread when they're favored so far. Much rather take Jacksonville in this spot.
Gare Bear.
I mean, honestly, they should just fire the entire AFC South into the sun, and just so we don't have to talk about these divisional games anymore. Look,
Easy,
the Titans.
Dolphins fan.
The Titans never. Well, the Dolphins should be in the AFC South. The Titans just never come through when you think they're going to come through. They've only covered they've only covered the next week 18 of their last 56 wins against the spread because they're the Titans. They're inconsistent. So with that half-point swing on there, give me the Jaguars.
All right, who would you rather roster from this one? Leonard Fournette for $7,300 or Derrick Henry for $6,900? We got to move a little quicker here, only 90 seconds. Garion, where are you going?
I'm going to go with Derrick Henry. The way to attack Tennessee is through the air. Unless Leonard Fournette becomes a quarterback in the next 90 minutes, I think we're all good.
Greg, where are you going?
So Leonard Fournette, just because of his role on the team, he's super involved in the pass game and the run game. He's on the field basically every single play, so that gives him a really high floor.
Steve, talk to me.
Derrick Henry's been on fire the past 3 weeks, averaging just under 5 yards per carry in his past 3 games against a particularly low Kansas City defense has been very poor against the run. That was a tough one. He absolutely went off on them. 23 carries, 188 yards. The performance was so good I couldn't even speak. I was just basking in how good it was.
All right, I think we have time for a viewer question.
No problem. I'll do it. Benny Snell with the Bengals D or Darius Geis with the Dolphins D? Let's go with Garion.
Give me Darius Geis there. At least I can guess he'll get about 10 touches. I can't really say the same for Snell.
Alrighty, to all of you amazing people watching on News 12 Long Island, this is it. This is when we are no longer on your TV. It's a sad moment. Have a great rest of your weekend, though. But we still have 30 more minutes of the sweat on the DK Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. So you guys can just keep watching. So go ahead and tune in and watch us.
Highly recommend it, Jesse.
Pull up your computers. We'll see you in a minute.
Coming up, hot takes. Who to make it rain for? But first, as in right now, it's Levitan's Leverage.
It's about that time for the Week 12 Levitan's Leverage. I'm Tara Lynn, and he's the reason why we call this Levitan's Leverage, Adam Levitan. Let's start it off with the Saints' Alvin Kamara. Kamara is going up against the Panthers, who are not very strong against the run. Is this a matchup you like this week?
Yeah, certainly a good matchup for Alvin Kamara, but also the way that they used him in recent weeks. I thought that Latavius Murray would steal some based on what Latavius Murray was able to do while Alvin Kamara was out. But last week, Alvin Kamara comes out, gets 14 first half touches, a career high. So I think from a floor ceiling perspective, we know Alvin Kamara is going to catch at least 4 to 6 balls, and all the rushing equity is on top.
Odell Beckham is at home versus Miami. They've been trying to get him the ball more. 10 targets last week against the Steelers, but only 4 catches. What do you like about his ability to connect with Baker Mayfield this week?
Yeah, Odell really has not had a really good matchup since week 2. And in that game against the Jets, he went off for 161 yards and a touchdown. I think if you've been trying to get Odell Beckham going, this is for sure the spot home against this tanking Miami team, which is just so devoid of talent. So at 7K, I think that Odell Beckham really sticks out as a play that's really strong here.
And last, we got Matt Ryan. Ryan and the Falcons will look to make it 3 wins in a row. Are you expecting him to go off against Tampa Bay this week?
Yeah, the thing that we should know about Tampa Bay's defense is that they're so good against the run, and so bad against the pass. This is one of the biggest funnels that I can remember ever. And then we enter a spot where the Falcons' run game is basically broken. They couldn't run with Devontae Freeman. They're not going to be able to run very well with Brian Hill. So then you start getting really good matchups on the outside with Julio, with Calvin Ridley against these really bad corners for the Bucs, and it sets up a spot where it's really unlikely for Matt Ryan to be under 300 yards in this game. So I think he's really strong also.
All right, that'll do it. Adam Levitan, thank you very much.
All right, good luck.
Okay, no Julian this morning, which means we should expect a more civilized conversation between Reed and Steve. It's time for them to deliver their hottest takes, some of the hottest takes you've ever heard or seen before. Don't believe me? Watch this.
Okay, I'll go first here. That was a great toss. And I'm a little scared because Steve said he threatened Greg that he was in the studio, which I am with Steve, that it'd be a different story. But my first take is a take that all 3 of the panelists didn't like in that last block is Ezekiel Elliott will be a top 3 running back, total over 150 yards both on the ground and in passing, and 2 touchdowns this week. Look, the Patriots DVOA, yes, they've been strong, but their schedule at the beginning of the year hasn't been good. And if you just look at just their pass, number 29 in PFF in terms of run defense grade, Chubb and Ingram both went over 120 yards or 115 yards on the ground and are passing. Like Ingram got 27 passing yards, and over the last few weeks, we've seen the Patriots really struggle with the run, especially in the pass. This game is going to be, the weather's going to be bad, and Ezekiel Elliott needs to be the guy that needs to be the focal point of this offense if they need to go. And again, I think that this defense is ripe for the picking. No one's going to be on him. So Ezekiel Elliott, top 3 behind guys like Christian McCaffrey and Kamara, but top 3, 150 total yards, 2 tutties. Steve, I'm scared.
It's okay. I wouldn't say this is the worst take you ever had when you said DJ Moore was going to make a catch in week 4 or whatever it was. Here's the thing, we've seen opposing running backs do well against the Patriots. The one that really sticks out to my mind is when Nick Chubb faced them, and he had an absolutely good game. He had over 100 rushing yards in that game against what we thought was almost an indestructible Patriots run defense. But we've seen some chinks in the armor as of late. Top 3, I think, is a bit of a stretch here, just because I think there's other guys who can do well. There's we'll talk about Kamara in a second there. There's a little bit of a tease for you. But Nick Chubb is in a really good spot here. Christian McCaffrey isn't in the best spot against the Saints. Saints, but we know he can do it through the air. It doesn't necessarily be through the ground here. So I think top 3 is a little too much there. 2 touchdowns if they do get in the red zone. That's probably the way they're going to do with how good the Patriots secondary is. So I'll give you half good take, half bad, because I don't think he's going to get in the top 3. I think that's a little bit too much. But 2 touchdowns, that's actually not too
let's
bad.
go for 3 touchdowns.
You know, Julian out here usually says this nonsense, but where he's not here, so we don't have to care about him. We said that we were going to talk about Alvin Kamara, so my hot take is that Latavius Murray is going to outscore Alvin Kamara in this one, and here's the reason why. You look at the Saints and their spread against the Carolina Panthers, 9.5 right now. If they get up to a lead like that, especially if they're leading early, Kamara's not the guy that they're leaning upon to take the carries. It's been Latavius Murray. Kamara's been more of the passing down back here. We've seen how many targets he's had over the last 3 weeks, over at 28. And he's only averaging about 9.3 carries over the last 3 games. He's not that guy that's been going out there and carrying the ball. Latavius Murray, I think, has a legitimate chance to surprise a lot of people on this slate here and potentially outscore Alvin Kamara. So there's hot take number 1 for you.
I hope Julian writes in, because this one, look, Latavius Murray, I think, is in a good spot. And so it's an RB3, so I'm not going to disagree with you there. And Carolina is 32nd in rush DVOA. So, yeah, they're the absolute worst. So when you look at Latavius Murray, especially if they want to keep Kamara healthy during the playoffs, that's what we've seen. I think Kamara, now we talked about injuries and guys getting healthier like Saquon Barkley, Kamara is just more involved in the pass game. So if this guy gets 10 catches, 9 catches, like Garen mentioned earlier, the PPR points with DraftKings scoring is just so much higher. Now, Latavius Murray, at his price point, like 6,100, a lot of people think that he is going to be a viable option in fantasy because that the Saints offense just wants to run more and more. And Carolina has been absolutely demolished on the ground. So for hot takes, I don't know. It's more like my hot take back in like week 8 as
That's
opposed
the
to...
most ridiculous thing that you could say, because nobody's talking about that at all. A hot take is supposed to be like, oh, actually, now that I think of it, that's actually not too bad.
So why is he priced so high then?
Why is he priced? Because he's in a good matchup.
Right,
That's
exactly.
The whole point.
So high in a good matchup.
So if everything was neutral, you would come out here and say, oh, I think Latavius Murray is going to outscore Kamara. Those words would never come out of your mouth.
No, so that's part as a hot take, but
that's
Latavius
the point
Murray
of the segment.
Having a good game, I think is, again, Carolina is terrible against the run. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
All right, look, you need to keep going because I'm about to leave.
Okay, so this one is really going to peeve you off here.
Fine.
Cincinnati, we talked about it in the SNY show. Cincinnati is going to go off for their first one of the season and the only one that they're going to get all season and beat Pittsburgh outright. And here's why. Look, no Pouncey, no Juju Smith-Schuster. Mason Rudolph is an absolute garbage quarterback, and we've seen it time and time again. And Cincinnati, look, there's no data out there, so I know you're going to spew data about how terrible they are at the running back or defending against the running backs and how much points they don't score and their quarterback is garbage. But look at the Steelers. Like, we've seen it before. Cincinnati was close against Oakland, my Oakland Raiders. They kept it close. Now they come back home against the Steelers teams. It's been all the chatter about that fight and all that chatter, and they've been distracted. And look, Tyler Boyd is going to have one of his best games of the season, 22% target share. And the Steelers are terrible guarding the slot receivers, 10th most in targets in terms of yards, touchdowns, receptions. They're top 3. So look at Tyler Boyd and the Bengals to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers outright.
Like, when we give hot takes, like, we kind of expect it to maybe potentially happen. Like, this is just not going to happen. The Steelers have the best pass rush in the game. And now we have Ryan Finley at quarterback. You think he's going to be able to get the ball to any of his receivers with the pass rush that the Steelers are going to throw it at him? Absolutely not. He can't even get the ball to his receivers when there's no pressure on him. So now he's going to have all these people in his face, and now all of a sudden he's magically going to get the ball. So give me a break. And then what, they're going to run Joe Mixon 30 times again and try to beat the Steelers that way? That's not not going to happen. Like, my hot take was great about Latavius Murray outscoring Kamara. You've had 2 okay ones. And I'll say okay because Ezekiel Elliott was not bad. This one was absolutely abysmal. My other one is really not that hot of a take, but I think it's something that can happen. I think James White's going to have over 10 receptions in this game because of all the injuries that the Patriots have. You know, everybody's yelling at me about Tom Brady's always on the injury report. I don't care. He's on there. What are they saying? The fake injuries? Like, now we got to go through and say, okay, that's a fake injury. That's a fake injury. We got to start doing that now. There's no Philip Dorsett. There's no Mohamed Sanu. So now James White, who's one of the most trusted receivers for Tom Brady, is going to get absolutely all these targets here. The Cowboys actually have allowed the 4th most receiving yards to opposing running backs. This is an absolute huge spot for James White with all the injuries there. So I think he has a legitimate chance of getting at least 10 receptions in this game.
So what was your definition of a hot take? their previous.
All right, let's hear it. Go ahead.
Well, look, James White's in a great spot. Sonny Michel's garbage. I mean, he's averaging, 3.2 carries per tote, or yards per carry. And look, they're not going to use Sonny Michel. And look, if this game is going to go the game script that we think it is, like you mentioned, James White has to be involved in this game. Ben Watson is a decent pivot in terms of tight ends in a low GPP big tournaments. But yeah, I mean, the offense has to run through those two guys, Julian Edelman and James White. And the Cowboys have been terrible against defending against running backs in the past game. So again, talking about hot takes, 10 receptions, that's a lot. We've seen it before from James White.
It's a hot take.
But that was last season. We haven't seen it out of Brady. That elbow might be a little sore, so yeah, I guess he gets more jump flops. But look, I don't mind it because, look, if you turn around, if this game can turn around, we're seeing a weather report in New England. It is absolutely terrible, so we're going to see a ton of James White. I don't mind it.
There we go.
The weather cam.
There it is. That's the Steve cam for all of you guys out there that don't know. But, enough of us because we're both red in the face and voices are running out. Let's get back to these guys.
Steve, you missed it. I know you can't see the monitor from where you're at, but we did pop up the weather cam for like a hot second.
Oh my God!
It's actually raining right now.
It's going to rain all day, which is why I'm going to nap and eat the rest of the day.
That's great.
All right, from hot takes to top fades, welcome back, DraftKings contributors Jeff Warwick and Greg Ehrenberg, as well as the fantasy girl, Rosalie Michaels.
All right, Jeff, who are you steering clear of in the 1 o'clock slate? Who you fading?
Yeah, what Steve missed there, too, is James White was just out there just catching ball after ball on the street. He's ready for a big game. So my fade is going to be Devontae Parker from the early games. Look, I get, Devontae Parker's been pretty good for fantasy purposes. He's had some pretty cake matchups, and it's still Devontae Parker. I think people are getting a little bit ahead of themselves all of a sudden trusting him in this matchup. The Cleveland Browns, since they've been healthy, have not allowed a wide receiver to catch more than 5 balls. They've allowed 1 touchdown to opposing wide receivers over the last 3 games. They haven't allowed a 100-yard game to a wide receiver since week 3, and that was with some backup cornerbacks playing. This is a bad matchup for Devontae Parker, so he's a pretty easy fade at chalky ownership for me.
Rosalie, what do you think? Who you fading?
Yeah, I am fading. I listened to Steve's hot take there where he said that Murray is going to outscore Kamara. I think he's close, but it's going to be in Cleveland that Hunt is going to outscore Chubb. So I have Chubb as my fade. Like I said earlier, I think this is a trap game for Chubb because it looks like it's going to be great. But again, if you look at what Miami has done, week 3, they gave up a lot of fantasy points to Dallas, 43.7. But most of those were to Tony Pollard, not to Ezekiel Elliott. Since then, they've had under 10 fantasy points to Buffalo, 9.2 to Mac, and 27 to Connor, but Connor was the workhorse back. He had 23 carries and 4 targets. Chubb's not going to have that. And like I said earlier as well, Miami has lost all 3 of their secondary starters. So I think we're going to see Baker throw the ball a little bit more. So I'm fading Chubb this week.
Greg, who is getting the fade from you in the 1 o'clock slate?
Yeah, so I'm going with Devin Singletary here. I think that he is a talented running back. There's been a lot of slates where he's been talked up and he's been a little bit popular. The issue is just that he doesn't find the red zone, the end zone in the red zone. There's so many other guys they go to there, like Josh Allen gets touches. Frank Gore, for some reason, always seems to vulture Singletary when they get down the field. So for that reason, it's hard to see the real upside in GPPs for Singletary, and the floor has been fairly low for him also.
Alrighty, only 2 games in the 4 o'clock window. Who are you fading here, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to fade the New England DST here. It comes down to a couple factors. First of all, is price. You have the Saints up there. I think you can pay up for the Browns. I know it's going to be a rainy game and all this, but going up against Dak Prescott is basically like going up against a guy like Russell Wilson right now. Why would you want to start your DST against a quarterback playing so well? I do think the Cowboys are going to put up some points. Dak can run the ball a little bit. They're just going to be able to pound Zeke Elliott here. So I know the Patriots DST has been paying off in spades for people this year, and I know they have a really good defense, but I don't like the spot for them at all, even at this price.
Rosalie?
It's funny, I'm kind of going against Jeff here because I'm not fading the New England defense, but I am fading Dak Prescott, which I hate doing because I love the Cowboys and I love Dak. But, it's versus New England. We've already talked about the weather. And that New England defense is just a quarterback killer. They have been killing the quarterbacks. Dak's not going to see ghosts, but he's definitely not going to see those beautiful numbers that he's been putting up. He is fire, but New England averages 8.6 fantasy points to QBs at home. Gillette Stadium is it's hard to play there, especially when it's windy and cold and wet. I mean, the only QB to do well versus New England is Lamar Jackson, or as I like to call him, Superman. 28.6 fantasy points. So not even still those 40 points that we like to see out of him. Yeah, Dak can move around too, but as much as I love him, he's not L-Jax. So I don't think it's going to be under 10 fantasy points for Dak, but I think it could be under 15, and I'd rather pay up for Matty Ice here.
Gregory, your 4 o'clock fade.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tom Brady here. It's hard to find a fade for the afternoon just because there's only 2 games there and there's not all that much fantasy upside anyway. But for Tom Brady, here's the issue. The weather's going to be really bad. It's going to be windy. It's going to be really rainy. And he's missing his top receivers. So we've got Philip Dorsett isn't expected to play. Mohamed Sanu isn't expected to play. So it's hard to figure out who he's going to throw the ball to really have upside. And then the other thing also we have to consider is, as Steve mentioned, he comes in today mortally wounded.
All right. That's some excellent work, you three. Yep, let's see who everyone's locking into their lineups right after Pat Mayo helps you out with a few sleepers on today's slate.
What up? Pat Mayo here inside the Pat Mayo Experience Studios. If you missed the Pat Mayo Experience live on Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, what's wrong with you? You should be tuning into both the Sweat and the Pat Mayo Experience live to get the most information possible. But for right now, I got some cheap plays on DraftKings that you can utilize in Week 12 if you're trying to jam in all the top-end running backs. Let's start at running back. Who can you pay down for? It's not a great week to pay down. I'm not going to lie to you. The best ones I figure, well, everyone's paying down for Miles Sanders. He's going to be super chalky. He's the Brian Hill of this week. Just don't play Miles Sanders. Seems pretty easy. If he beats you, he beats you. If he doesn't beat you, like 25% of the field is going to be boxed out. So that seems like a very acceptable risk for me. No Miles Sanders. You'd be better off going back to a low-owned Brian Hill this week rather than Miles Sanders. The guys that I actually like, Kalen Ballage is super cheap. You can probably use him. Benny Snell will return for the Steelers. He will probably be their lead back, and everyone will just look at Jalen Samuels and say, oh, well, he's going to get all the receiving work, and that might be the case, but the Steelers are favorites in this game against the worst run defense in the league. If they actually want to run between the tackles, Snell's going to be their guy. He's super cheap, he's below $5,000, and has 2 touchdown upside. Not saying use all your lines with Benny Snell, but if you wanted to mix him in as salary cap relief at running back after you paid up at other positions, it's not the worst idea in the world. I like him better than Bo Scarborough down in that lane too. At receiver, few guys you can use, very low floors, but some decent upside here. One is Nelson Aguilar, and a lot of that hinges on whether both Jordan Howard and Alshon Jeffrey are out. If Alshon plays, you probably don't want to use Nelson Aguilar. So let's pretend Alshon is now active for this game. Who else can you use? Well, I like Allen Hurns the best, playing catch-up against the Cleveland Browns. Everyone's using Devontae Parker. Maybe they should be using Allen Hurns in this matchup. Had a huge market share last week. I projected over 15% again this week at a pure catch-up spot. Like that a lot. Russell Gage, once again, had a touchdown overturned last week for the Falcons. Everyone's just paying for Julio, to a lesser extent paying for Calvin Ridley. Gage is going to be on the field close to 100% of the time. If he just falls into the end zone, under $4,000, that's a way to really make your lineups work. And Scotty Miller is the other one on the other side of the ball for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a situation where everyone, we know about Evans, we know about the tight ends, we know about Godwin. He's just their deep threat guy, a super high ADOT. Most of the time, he's going to return 0 DraftKings points. But in the instance that he does hit, it's going to be a deep play, and it would just take one for this to happen. With so much attention being paid to all those other options, he might get single coverage down the field. And Jameis, not afraid to throw a pick, also not afraid to throw it deep either. And Scotty Miller would be the one who would benefit the most from that. These are all just cost-saving type guys. At quarterback, Jeff Driscoll's really the only for sure good pay down guy that I like. He's $5,500. He's going to run. It's a sweet matchup against the Redskins. Jeff Driscoll, you can play him with Golladay, you can play him with Marv Jones, or you can just play him by himself. He might do enough with his legs alone that you can play him naked that way. Tight end is a complete disaster this week. You might want to pay up for Ertz, but where are you going to get the Mondays? It's hard to afford the top end tight end. So here are the 4 pay down guys that I don't hate. I like Russell Knox and Mike Gesicki the best. I think that they have the highest floors plus the touchdown upside. If you're really just going to step up to the plate and try to hit a 500-foot home run, you're looking at Nick O'Leary, who's the only viable pass-catching tight end for the Jags at this moment. No Josh Oliver, no Seth the Valve. It projects to be a higher scoring game than I think it is on paper. You can pass against the Titans. It's hard to run against the Titans. He might run, I don't know, let's say 30 routes in this game if they use him in the red zone. It's just going to take a touchdown at his price point below $3,000. Ditto for Foster Moreau. We all know Darren Waller is good, but the touchdowns keep funneling their way to Foster Moreau. He's below $3,000. The Jets are atrocious on pass defense, and it's someone they're going to look for in the red zone. Again, it might be 2 catches for 9 yards and a touchdown, but hey, maybe he scores twice, and all of a sudden he breaks the slate and gives you access to those high-end guys that you want. At defense, realistically, I think there's one option if you want to pay down $2,400, Broncos defense against the Bills. You need the script to flip a little bit if the Broncos get ahead in this game and you can get Josh Allen passing over 35 times. It's a recipe for some sacks. It's a recipe for some fumbles and maybe some interceptions. We do know the Broncos defense still pretty good. It's a low percentage play, but when you start looking down the list at defenses and all the cheap ones, nothing really stands out. The best pressure defense down there is the Denver Broncos against a historically turnover-prone quarterback. I do like that matchup if you have to save the money because realistically, you're going to want to pay up at running back this week. You're going to want to pay up at all the positions, but it's imperative that you pay up at running back. And if you do a stack like McCaffrey and Kamara, which I know a lot of people are going to try out, you got to save your money somewhere. So maybe some of these guys can help you get to your salary cap minimums. I'm Pat Mayo. Follow me at the PME for any advice. Check out DKPlaybook.com for all of the updated picks, spread picks, and rankings at each position. But for now, back to the sweat.
You name an analyst, and he or she is here with us to close out the sweat. DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler, Steve Buchanan. We got Jeff Ulrich, Greg Ehrenberg, and the Rosalie Girl Fantasy Michaels on the interwebs.
wait. The Rosalie Girl, I like that. That's a new name.
I got it.
You okay there, buddy?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
It's raining outside, and it's time to make it rain. Give us your top DFS play, your must start, a player who's going to make it rain, cash, money for you. Steve, you are up.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Jamison Crowder. I feel like he's not getting enough talk about this week going up against one of the worst secondaries with the Raiders, especially against slot receivers. With Sam Darnold under center, he's averaging over 8.5 targets per game. I feel like this is going to be a really good spot for Crowder, and really not anybody who's getting a ton of talk here. So I think Crowder is one of the best mid-tier wide receiver plays here on this slate.
What do you think about his pick?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to attack this game, and if you're looking at not necessarily trusting the Raiders, like Tyrell Williams hasn't eclipsed 4 receptions, so you can't really trust that over the last few weeks he's been back. And we talked about it. The Oakland Raiders give up a ton of points, especially to the deep ball. Robbie Anderson, he hasn't been a guy that we can trust week in, week out. Jamison Crowder's getting so many targets. So mid guy that I like, you heard in the hot takes, I like Tyler Boyd at $5K, but Crowder's not a bad play either.
Okay, while you're talking, you want to just go ahead and give us
absolutely. It's going to be Julio Jones. How can you go off of this guy? This guy is in a great spot. Tampa Bay, one of the worst teams guarding the wide receivers. They give the most points to that position, and no one on that team's going to be able to cover Julio. They're 30th in deep ball per passing defense, and they've just been decimated by injuries as well. If you look at Matt Ryan, not necessarily mobile guys, so if that pass rush does come, I do like Julio Jones. Targets, receptions, yards, everything. There's definitely pivots in that game that you can go to, but give me Julio.
Does anybody have a strong opinion about the Julio pick? Anybody on the interwebs?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad fade this week, to be honest, just because I could see the way the Falcons have played. They get up a little bit, and then they've slowed the games down the last couple weeks, and it just hasn't allowed into a lot of targets for Julio. That's the only concern. It's not the matchup. It's just how is the game flow going to work? I think there's enough of a chance of that happening, given how well Atlanta's played the last 2 weeks. It sounds weird to say that in big GPPs, he's a fade. Again, if the game flow works out, the matchup is there for him to go off.
Your shark drawing is poor.
Oh, wow.
Looks like a submarine.
Dang, you guys just exchanging blows.
All right.
The Falcons.
All right, Greg, let's get your pick to make it rain.
All right, so I'm going with N'Keal Harry here. It is so hard to find value on this slate. There aren't very many viable cheap plays. If we look at the Patriots wide receiver core, it's really banged up right now, and Harry's a really high upside player. The floor is literally 0 for him. He might do nothing, so this is strictly a GPP play. With that said, like when I'm struggling to find cheap guys to go to, I think Harry makes sense. And who else is Brady going to throw the ball to this weekend?
Well, if you're listening to the hot take segment, I mentioned James White. I don't know if you know about that guy. Yeah, thank you, Rosalie. I know Rosalie was listening.
Yeah.
The only thing here is, though, is that the Cowboys secondary has been so good. Like, you said that N'Keal Harry has all this upside. Is that from the one game that we saw him playing so far? Is that the data you're going off of there, Greg?
No, so it's going off of his draft acumen, how highly I thought of him going into the draft and coming into the NFL.
So you're one of like the scouts now. So now we got to go off of what you say. How do you feel about Brady's elbow? Is it hurt or not?
My concern is, how is N'Keal Harry going to catch the ball in a monsoon when Brady doesn't have?
Shut up, Jeff. Shut up, Jeff. There's no monsoon outside.
Actually, guys, can we cut away to our traffic cam real quick and the weather cam?
Look at that.
Oh my God.
No one's on the streets. I mean, that
No.
gives you an idea of how terrible it is.
Yeah, it's miserable.
But didn't Greg also?
Man?
Greg also mentioned
accident.
Yeah, look, Greg
It's an
didn't.
accident.
Greg, didn't you mention that you're going to fade Brady as well?
Yeah, so I think there's a difference. First of all, I had to fade somebody. I had to fade somebody from the afternoon where it's only 2 games. The other thing also is with Harry, like Harry could easily catch a touchdown and have like 4 catches for 40 yards, and Brady could not have a good game. There could be better quarterbacks on the slate, and Harry's just decent because he's almost min-priced, and it's more to do with the outlay of the slate than anything else because there's so few cheap players that I'm really wanting to roster. And frankly, there's a lot of guys I'm rostering, they're just not good football players.
Greg is just getting a hard time because he made Steve mad earlier, and now Steve is going for the throat.
I'm not afraid of Steve at all.
I am 100%
I am one of the most
afraid.
ferocious 135-pound
Okay.
on all of the East Coast. I am trained under Master Nick Lachey and karate chops. Like, there's nothing Steve can do to me.
Okay. Before we come to physical blows through the internet, Jeff, who's your pick to make it rain?
Well, unlike Reed, who just picked old Julio, I'm picking new Julio and DJ Chark.
Yeah!
It's Chark week,
DJ Chark, DJ Chark,
DJ, I mean, look, just look at how bad the Tennessee secondary has been over the last 3 weeks. 240 yards per game to the wide receiver position.
Ooh.
Apparently, Adoree Jackson, who's been absolutely terrible in shadow coverage his entire career, is going to be shadowing DJ Chark. This is not good for Adoree Jackson or the Tennessee Titans. It also doesn't help that it also does help, that the Jaguars' rush defense has not been good. So Derrick Henry could easily go off. The Jaguars could just find themselves throwing just like last week. I see a very similar game script for DJ Chark as last week, and I see another big game.
How do you guys feel about the Chark pick?
I mean, I like it too. You saw what he did with Nick Foles last week, 33 DK fantasy points against the Colts there. So I think it's actually a really good spot because nobody's talking about Chark at all, and especially with his price range at 6,400, he doesn't feel like an appealing play, especially in a game that has a low total overall. So I think it's actually pretty interesting. Nice job, Jeff.
All right.
Your drawing is still terrible.
Rosalie, it's slowly improving in my eyes. Rosalie, who is your pick to make it rain?
Oh my gosh, I've missed you guys so much because there are some things I can always count on from you guys. I can count on Steve threatening to punch somebody, and Jeff picking Chark or Coleman as his make it rain guy. So,
2 years running here.
So
The worst.
I'm going Kamara here. You know what? It's Carolina versus Carolina gives up a lot of fantasy points, 31.3 fantasy points. 2 running backs win away. They give it 27.3 to Aaron Jones, 40.1 to Jeff's guy Coleman, and he's only seen less than 7 targets twice this season. This will be a Kamara game. Last week, Kamara was second only to Michael Thomas in both receiving yards and targets, and he outcarried Latavius Murray, who is Steve's hot take, by 13-10. But then again, Murray got most of those carries when the game script got out of hand, right? So I'm loving Kamara this week for lots and lots of points.
Anyone concerned about Kamara?
Well, if you listen to the hot take segment, obviously I had my concerns there. And Rosalie just said it herself. It was he got all those carries when the game script brought out of hand. That could be what happens to you today against the Panthers because the Saints are favored by 9.5 points. So that's something you have to take into consideration. I still think Kamara can get his points. I still think he's very viable in the passing game. But I think if his game does get out of hand, Murray is someone that could step in and steal some of those carries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, but Kamara's going to have over 30 fantasy points before that happens.
That's fine. Then you win.
She'll make it rain.
All right, we got about a minute to go. Let's hit some questions real quick since we're talking about Kamara. Steve, if you had to go Kamara or Michael Thomas in the flex, who would you pick?
I think Michael Thomas, actually, because I think he's someone that won't get scripted out of a game, unlike Kamara, and he just has such a high ceiling with his reception, so I will take Thomas.
Reed, Cooper Kupp or Devontae Parker?
I think Kupp's he's in a bad spot, but you got to go with Kupp. He's just a better receiver.
Jeff, Mike Evans, Derrick Henry, Jalen Samuels, or Odell Beckham Jr., you must pick one.
Yeah, like how do you have all these players, first of all, to choose from?
I don't know. It must be like a two-team
I'm going to
league.
go with Odell. I really feel like he scored twice today.
Ooh.
Greg, Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan?
Matt Ryan, it's a much more favorable matchup. And even though Russell Wilson has been really good this season, among the favorites for MVP, the fantasy production hasn't really been there the last few weeks.
Guys, that's it. We have 15 seconds to go.
Yeah, we don't
Not
have
enough time to ask
That's
any of
it.
you any more questions.
Yeah, thank you for watching. We're here every Sunday.
And we have calzones
and during
in the
week
kitchen right
from
now.
6 to 7. All right, we will see you probably tomorrow at 6.
Yeah, almost asleep.
Bye, everybody.